All right, moving on to the Establishment Clause within the First Amendment. So remember what the amendment says. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, meaning creating their own religion. Congress could not do that. But here's the wrinkle. At the time of the Constitution, there were 8 of the 13 colonies that had state-sponsored religions. So if you go back to our discussion in the courts, you remember that the Bill of Rights originally only applied to the national government, to the federal government. And the same was true of the Establishment Clause. If a state wanted to have a state-established religion, that was their prerogative. And as you can see, at least 8 of the 13 colonies, some historians will put it at 7. 7 or 8 of the colonies had state-sponsored religions. But what has happened in the meantime is the court has taken the view that religion can't even be established in degrees. So, for instance, if you advance a certain religious belief, you are establishing that religion, so to speak, in a degree. That's the approach that the court has taken. Okay, so the reality is the court has really adopted Jefferson's wall of separation principle about what it means to establish a religion. So here we go. So let's take a look at a case and decide whether or not this wall of separation principle has been violated. So the case was Everson versus Board of Education. Here are the facts. A New Jersey town reimbursed parents for the cost of transporting their children to school, including parochial Catholic schools. So is this a wall, or is this a breach of the wall of separation? Should we pay for Catholic kids to go to school? That's the question. Court ruled no, that busing was a religiously neutral activity akin to providing fire and police protection. Well, that's an interesting take on it. If you look at this also, they were, meaning the government, was reimbursing parents for sending their children to school. It was public school or Catholic parochial school. If there had been another school, they probably would have reimbursed them for that as well. If they hadn't, then that would have been a problem. If you look at it this way, the Catholic parents had already paid through their taxes for their children to be bused to a school. The fact that they were being bused to a Catholic school was meaningless from the perspective their tax dollars had already been taken to pay for busing. But I think the court's ruling here shows you that there can be religiously neutral activities. You wouldn't have some church on fire call up 911 and say, yeah, we're the Catholic Church on 5th and Main, and we're burning, and the operator said, Catholic Church? Oh, sorry, no, that'd be a violation of separation of church and state. We can't come. Or a robbery, same kind of thing. So this is a very interesting ruling and a sound ruling, I think. Okay, so what happened was, after a lot of cases, the Supreme Court created what was called the Lemon Test. The Lemon Test was a summation of the previous courses. What the court was trying to do was they were trying to let the lower courts know what they had decided in the previous cases and give them a workable rule in which to apply future cases. So the Lemon Test Lemon was just the name of the guy in this case where they summed it all up. So here were the 3 guiding principles the court felt that they had established in the prior cases. That the law had to have a secular purpose in order for it to stand. It could not have a religious purpose. Its primary effect, meaning the primary effect of the law, neither advances nor inhibits religion. And finally, the law does not foster an excessive government entanglement with religion. And if it met those 3 tests, then the law was constitutional. That was the focus that the court felt they had established in preceding cases, and that's where they went after the Lemon Test. And so let's take a look at a few cases, and you can say what you think, or you can think what you think. Just make yourself a mental note. So prayer in public schools, should that be allowed based on the Lemon Test? Moment of silence in public schools, should it be allowed based on the Lemon Test? Prohibiting the teaching of evolution, giving creationism equal time with evolutionary theory, and vouchers to pay for school at religious schools, or nativity scenes on public media. So, going back to the Lemon Test, is there a the first prong of the Lemon Test, is there a secular purpose for having prayer in public schools? And you'd have to answer no. The real purpose of having prayer in public schools is to foster a belief in a higher being. Therefore, it would fail on that ground. You wouldn't even have to examine the other two questions. Okay, moment of silence in public schools. Moment of silence really is kind of cutting the baby in two, if we can borrow Solomon's example here. Does the law have a secular purpose? You've had something horrible happen at school shooting, and they come back, a day, 2 days later, and what do? They have a moment of silence for the school to, quote, think about the victims. Is there a secular purpose here, or is it all religious? And certainly there's a secular purpose. It gives students, teachers, staff time to honor, think about those people who may have died. It gives some consolation and therapy there. So it certainly has a secular purpose. Primary effect neither advances nor inhibits religion. Agreed. For some people it might advance. No, because there's no prayer. Some people might be praying in the heart. Well, that's just how it is. Nothing against that, really, so to speak. Does it foster an excessive entanglement of government religion? No. We do this all the time. It's no big deal. So that would pass the Lemon Test. Prohibiting the teaching of evolution. Evolution, the idea that we evolved from a single-celled organism and moved up through the species until we became the Homo sapien that we are today. What is the deal with prohibiting that teaching? Is it to advance the belief that the creationist theory, as articulated in the book of Genesis, is what actually happened? And it certainly seems to be the case. So it fails based on the first prong of the Lemon Test. It does not have a secular purpose. In fact, it has a religious purpose, the purpose of trying to show that God created the world, and therefore end of story. What about giving creationism equal time with evolutionary theory? Same problem. Now you can look at this and you can say, well, creationism is just one theory and evolution is just one theory, because after all, it's never been proven, so to speak, either one of them. So they're both theories. Problem being, in our system, you cannot put religion on the same footing as other theories. There's a separation of church and state, right or wrong, good or bad. That's where it's developed. And so this would be a violation of the Lemon Test. Vouchers to pay for schooling at religious schools. Absolutely, like the Emerson case. Parents have already paid for the schooling of their kids. In fact, this is taking some of the burden off public schools, and that's just what it is. How about a nativity scene on a public median? You would think, okay, certainly this has a religious purpose and therefore not secular. The courts have disagreed. They've said this is so rooted in the culture of our country that it's just who we are, and that's just how it is. Now, will that stand forever? I highly doubt it, but that's what it is. And so what do you get? What do you get from all that? You get really these 3 points. The court has struck down prayer in public schools, but has allowed prayer in Congress. There's some ambiguity there. Why you can't have prayer in public schools, but you can have prayer in Congress? They have prayer at the beginning of every Supreme Court session as well. Public schools can't have a chaplain, but the armed services can. Court's doctrine, no advancement of religion, yet it has allowed the printing of God we trust in money. So there's this ambiguity that goes on in the court's decision, and this is what I mean by it really seems to be a picket fence in a lot of ways, not this wall of separation. So the conclusion of all this is the court is deeply divided, some would say deeply confused, and it's difficult to summarize its decisions over religious issues. And that's where that is. That's where that is on that issue. All right, when we pick up on the next video, we'll start with interpreting and applying the First Amendment with respect to speech.